your family has been in journalism for, I don't know, I think even your
Ever.
mom was for forever. Yeah. So tell me about that. I mean, I think you must have grown up with the newspaper.
Yeah, and my father came here in 1948, and I was born 5 or 6 years later after that. But he had been working here since '48. Uh, Worked for a family that had run the paper for many years, and the head of that family, who he was working for, died very young. Still had kids in grade school, and my father took over the paper, working for the other family for another 30 years or so, until it was time for him to retire. And the family was like, what are we going to do now? We don't have somebody to run the paper. And they were talking about selling it. And we looked around, they looked around, and saw who it was that was buying newspapers at the time. And we didn't like them. And so I went together with my parents. We went half and half and bought the paper. I was at the time, I had just finished working about 20 years at the Milwaukee Journal and was now teaching as a tenured journalism professor at the University of Illinois. And we just bought the paper mainly to turn it into an employee-owned company. But employee-owned companies always have problems. The employee falls in love with somebody who lives in some other town and moves away and whatever else. So we just ended up keeping it and have tried to run it ever since. So it's been in my family since 1948. It's been around since 1869 in the other family. So it's just basically two families.
Wow. Okay. So so your parents worked for the paper, and then you ended up going
Oh,
into
I,
your own
I ended up,
journalism.
I mean, I ended up working starting in about fifth grade. I mean, there's crap that kids can do at newspapers. I covered sports and did their photo work and whatever else, then went off to journalism school and did my own career, and wasn't there until we bought the place in '98. And then I kind of would come back because I was teaching at the university, and you'd have summer vacation and fall break and winter break and spring break, and I spent most of those coming down here and helping out as I could.
Okay. Um, what? Obviously, it's a super small town, so I'm sure politics has been an issue the entire time. Can you kind of tell me about that?
Ever and always. It's changed a bit in recent years. Nationwide, there's been a great outmigration of people from rural areas, partly economically determined because there aren't so many locally owned businesses. There aren't that many opportunities to keep the best and brightest kids in town. So we've had a little bit of a population decline, but more of a leadership vacuum, that we don't have quite the same level of leadership, I think, that we've had in the past. And it's as with all small towns, very, uh, Lake Wobegon, all the children are above average and everything else.
That's awesome. That reminds me of, my parents were huge Lake Wobegon, Garrison Keeler fans all as through my childhood, so I listened to a lot of that. What so so I mean, journalism, part of it is to call out government and stuff like that. So was there always a bit of a tension, I guess, between the back and forth between the newspaper and the local
Oh,
government?
ever and always. I mean,
Yeah.
my father used to like to show that there was a bullet hole in the office window next to his desk. I can remember when our car the tires got slashed on it because a high school kid was upset that we'd run a picture of his grandfather's fatality accident. The high school kid now is a police chief someplace else, by the way, but
Interesting.
uh,
Interesting.
and a really cooperative, nice source for us. I mean, he's a great guy. Uh,
Okay.
you know, a emotions run high in small towns, as anywhere, and because it's so up close and personal, it's easy to do something with the emotions. So,
Sure, sure. Do you know the story behind the bullet hole?
no, I don't.
Okay.
I don't know whether it was intentional to get him or just, somebody firing something from down the street somewhere accidentally.
Sure. Okay. So, I mean, tell me about the what set this whole thing off? The tip that you guys got.
Well, you can go with the long version and the short version. The long version goes back about 20 years, so I'll go with the short version.
Well, I'm willing to listen to the whole story, Eric. So
Well,
if you're
we'd had long disputes with the person who was at the time the mayor. He had previously been the city administrator, and going back more than 20 years, we had what at the time was one of the first outbreaks of blue-green algae, cyanobacteria, in the water supply, and the state had come in and told Marion and Hillsborough, the two towns that we cover around here, each of which has a separate water plant, each of which gets their water from the same reservoir, that they couldn't use the water anymore. It wasn't safe. And we got a tip actually from the Hillsborough water plant that the Marion water plant was going ahead and taking water. And we pressed it forward, and it was denied. And then eventually, when we've had the proof that it actually was happening, the city administrator at the time said, well, I went out in a boat and looked at where the water was coming in, and I couldn't see any algae, so I thought it was safe. Now, let's ignore the fact that the toxin's invisible, that it doesn't matter whether you can see the algae and all the rest of this. But we kind of caught him in a lie, and things have been tense ever since. He left office. He almost got thrown out of office as city administrator. Then he got put into office as mayor on a promise that he would fire another city administrator, which he didn't do. But he had developed a whole reputation for doing a lot of things. Probably the most important recent one was he put through a resolution that allowed for the city to pass bond issues without having votes. You know, normally the city residents have to vote on a bond issue. And he publicized this in the city's newsletter and conveniently left out the section that said that, oh, by the way, in the future, we don't need these elections if we don't want to. We don't even need to do an ordinance. We can just have a resolution and just borrow anytime we want to. Well, a bunch of people, including a former mayor and the current vice mayor and the newspaper, campaigned against this. It was a charter ordinance that allows you to override state law, except that there's a provision in it that you can have a referendum and reject it. And they got the referendum on the ballot, and it was rejected by a 9-1 margin at the polls. And this kind of irked the mayor, and we proceeded into a series of minor little things that were challenges between the mayor and the newspaper that lasted about 6 months. At the end of that, there was a restaurant owner in town who was they were going to have a new congressman. We'd been gerrymandered. This goes before they redrew all the districts everywhere in the country, but they did it in Kansas to gerrymander us into a district so that they could get Lawrence, Kansas, which was of the other party, out of the district. But the congressman was new, and he was having a meet and greet. He had personally, his staff had personally invited us to go to it. So we showed up. And the restaurant owner had us thrown out by the police chief. She didn't want any media present in the meeting. Now, this really didn't bother us because we just stood outside the restaurant. And when the congressman came out, the congressman went down to our office and spent an hour and a half talking to us exclusively. So we actually got a better interview out of it than we would have gotten if we'd gone to the meeting. But we did report on it. And in response to that reporting, a former friend of the restaurant owner sent us a document, sent us a tip, first of all. It said that the restaurant owner's been driving for 20 years illegally, and the cops won't do anything about it. And we said, well, you know, how do we know this? And she says, well, here's this proof. And we said, well, how do we know that this is legit? And so we couldn't figure it out. We couldn't figure out how she got it because she had connections in the law enforcement community. Her husband is a retired state trooper, and she was a dispatcher. And we thought she might have obtained this improperly. So we wanted to see whether it could be done. We called the State Department of Motor Vehicles and asked them, how do you get this thing? They told us, and we did it. And we looked at it and said, yep, that's legit. Meanwhile, we had another source who told us that this was really just a dispute between the restaurant owner and her estranged husband. They were going through a divorce, and he was paying for the car, and the insurance, which, by the way, he's disabled and the car has special hand controls and so on. And he wanted to get the car in the divorce settlement and wanted to argue that she can't drive legally anyway, so why should she get the car? And we got the tip about that and said, this is a divorce case. We're not going to cover it. We're not going to write anything about it. But there still was a question about whether she was driving illegally and the police were ignoring it. And we weren't sure. We knew that we could obtain the document a legal way, but we weren't sure that was the way she obtained it. So I wrote the sheriff and the police chief and told them the story and said, we're not doing anything about it. Here's what we've got. If you want us to help in any way, we'll be happy to help. Week went by. We didn't hear a word from either of them until they showed up at our door with search warrants.
Wow. So, I mean, obviously, so you told him that you got, let me mute you here if I can. You told him that you got this as a tip, and then did you tell him also that, hey, we also went through the official way and got it the way
I
the
don't know that we
state
said any details. I said that we received this as a tip and we verified that it was accurate. I didn't explain
Sure.
how we verified it.
Sure. And then no back and forth.
No.
And then they show up to do a search warrant.
Yeah, a week later, they show up to do the search warrant. And we've got, since all this happened, there were special prosecutors. The Kansas Bureau of Investigation, the Colorado Bureau of Investigation was called in as an independent agency to look at it. We've got transcripts of all those editorials, including I believe it was 5-minute phone call in which they called to see how we obtained the document. And the CBI agents and the Kansas special prosecutors said either the cop who talked to him had already made up his mind that they'd done something illegal, or he was stupid or just didn't listen. Because if you listen to the transcript, they said, yeah, it's perfectly legal to get the document that way.
Sure. Or he had an axe to grind.
Bias of some sort,
Did it come out ever? Did he have was there some other angle that he was working? I know when I looked at the police chief, he had only been the chief for like a year, and he came from a bigger agency. And
the guy who investigated it he actually replaced him as interim chief. He was kind of a brown noser ass kisser who wanted to get in good with the brand new chief. The chief coming to Marion was another story unto itself. And initially we thought that was one of the motivations, because we announced that he was going to be offered the job of chief, and it was fishy to us because he was a captain in the Kansas City Police, making close to $120,000 a year. Mm-hmm. And was offered a job as chief of the Marion Police, making $60,000 a year.
Right.
And he was 1 year away from retirement.
Huh.
Well, we got sources, his people who he'd worked with, dozens of them, found out about the story and sent us tips that said, he was about to get demoted in Kansas City. He was going to be busted all the way from captain down to sergeant. And the way Kansas City's pensions work, it's based on your final salary, and it would have greatly cut into his pension. So he was allowed to retire as a captain, which would preserve his salary figure for his pension, and that's why he was coming to Marion. They characterized him as the worst cop they'd ever worked with. He'd run over dead bodies at a crime scene. He had all sorts of allegations of sexual abuse with fellow officers. It went on and on and on. But, and this is kind of typical of law enforcement officers, they won't go on the record telling us about the misdeeds of another officer. So we could not get an independent person on the record. And Kansas City Police Department's personnel records are strictly closed under Missouri law. So we could not run the story. We did confront him about the story, and he threatened to sue us, but we never ran anything about it. However, all of our documents about the investigation were sitting in our office when they searched them, and they found them. They not only found him, the officer who did the initial inquiry called the attention of the chief to the documents, and he went over and looked at them. And it included the LinkedIn page of our number one source. So, I mean, he knew who it was. But so they found out about that. We thought that was the primary motivation, and it may very well have been part of what colored the thing. I mean, as with almost anything, there's usually more than one cause, more than one root behind it. So that was one of the factors in there, plus the mayor not liking us, and the mayor getting involved in the investigation, which he denied. He claims that, oh, when I was told that this was going on, I said, stay clear of it, stay clear of it. Then we've got, under discovery, we found in a different suit, we found him making statements that he met with the police chief before the raid and told him he was behind him 100%, and a lot of other things like that. So there's a lot of different threads that lead into the tapestry.
Oh, I assumed when I heard that they were going at you over finding out that somebody had a revoked or suspended driver's license, and their reaction was to do all this, then
and it wasn't just us; it was also the vice mayor who had led the effort to overturn the vote, because the restaurant owner was in the process of seeking a liquor license, and the same source that gave us the document also gave it to the vice mayor, and she had questioned whether the woman involved was suitable to get a liquor license from the city. And so they went after the vice mayor as well and raided her house, as well as this house that I'm sitting in right now and our newspaper office.
Okay, so is the vice mayor the same? In the documents that or the reporting that I read, it said a council member.
Council member Ruth Herbal. She was the council member and vice mayor.
Same person. Okay. So did they raided the business office of the Record? Mm-hmm. They raided your house and they raided her house?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
All on the same day?
All simultaneously. It was billed and told to other law enforcement officers in the county as the biggest raid in the history of Marion County, Kansas. It involved ultimately 7 officers. There were 7 of them who, standing right where I am now, sitting right now, 7 of them came here where my mother lived. A week earlier, they'd raided the home of a known child molester. He'd molested a grandchild in his family, who was also known to have guns that he kept on his premises. They sent 2 officers to that. Apparently, a 98-year-old woman is, several times as dangerous as that.
As dangerous. Wow. Where were you when the raids took place?
I was actually, when they knocked at the door, I was sitting where I am right this moment, at a computer in my mother's house, because I was helping her. She had not yet gotten up that morning. She was sleeping late, and I was waiting for her to get up to help prepare her breakfast, dinner, whatever it was that we were getting ready to do. So I was sitting here. I eventually went down to the newspaper office, came back here, went down to the newspaper office, came back here several times during the thing. They were here in this house for 2.5 hours. They had to wait till they finished there were 2 officers here initially, and then the 5 others joined them from down at the newspaper office.
Okay, and so you actually went to both scenes while they were okay.
Yeah.
And they took computers, they took cell phones, they took documents,
computers, laptops, cell phones. It's interesting. The printout that we verified of the letter that we supposedly stole was sitting on my desk at the Record right next to my computer. They didn't take it.
Huh. Okay. So,
they did look through my bank records. That perturbed my mother. I'd been balancing my checkbook, and I had a whole bunch of bank records sat over here, and they spent some time looking at them. They didn't take any of them, but they looked at them.
Was that something financial? Was that on the search warrant at all?
Mm-hmm. No.
Okay. Yeah. So then tragically, your mother was 98, and the stress of all this obviously was too much for her.
Yeah, she was. And one of the things that's kind of unusual about this is not only did we have body cam footage, which takes a long time to get. I had, when I was living in Illinois, put some cameras up in her house, basically in case she fell or something, I would be able to see it. And so we had the whole thing recorded, and we also had cameras down at the office, and so we had a lot of things recorded. She became very upset with the police officers who were here. Now I will say this: one of them was very nice to her. The other one was kind of stonewalling, and she didn't like him. But she kept telling them in no uncertain terms that they should get out, that she'd done nothing wrong, and that they had no right to be here. Compared their tactics to Nazi tactics, and she just became very disconsolate. Kept saying, "Where are all the good people? You know, I've been here." She'd lived here. They moved to this house. I'm 72 years old. They moved to this house the day before I was born. And she had probably never lived anywhere other than a 3 or 4 block radius of this house in her entire life. And her father had been, back in the days when there was only one, the town constable too. So, I mean, she had connections with us. She was very offended that law enforcement would think she'd done anything wrong. And she spent the evening just sitting in a chair right over there. Just, where are all the good people? What's wrong? I've spent my whole life. She was sort of the town historian too. I spent my whole life devoted to this town, and they just turned their back on you. She wouldn't go to bed. She sat in the chair. I kept checking on her overnight. Somewhere around 6:30 in the morning, she went to bed. And around noon or so, I finally went in and said, she'd gotten up and gone to the bathroom and went back to the bedroom. And I said, you know, you really should eat something. You didn't eat at all yesterday. And you didn't eat your senior meal that they were bringing while you were raided, and you wouldn't eat anything in the evening. You haven't had breakfast today. You haven't had lunch today. Let me make something. So do you want me to bring it here in the bedroom? Do you want to come out to the kitchen? You want me to put it in the family room? She says, I don't know. I don't feel to, and died in the middle of that sentence. The coroner came. The coroner had actually been her family physician years ago, and attributed the death to sudden cardiac arrest related to the stress of the raid.
Unbelievable. Wow. What do you know about, because again, I'm in law enforcement, and so when I apply for a search warrant, our process is I write the search warrant myself, I write the affidavit, and then I run it by a prosecuting attorney, because they're going to be the ones who are going to have to fight for the fact that this is a valid search warrant, and then I get approval from them, and then I go to a judge. And in our county, the judges always ask me what, prosecuting attorney did you use? Not because they wanted to, not that they care. They just want to make sure that I can say, oh, I went to a prosecuting attorney. And so those are the checks and balances that we have here. I can't fathom how a prosecuting attorney or a judge signed off on this stuff. Do you have any information, background on that?
Oh, yes. and it didn't work that way. Let's put it that way. The police chief met with the sheriff, and the sheriff detached one of his investigators, and the police chief detached this guy that did the initial check to write the search warrant. The sheriff's detective refused to sign it. He said, this isn't based on my work. I'm not going to sign it. So he gave it to the police chief to say, you should sign it. The sheriff, meanwhile, wrote to the county attorney, the prosecutor in the county, and said, you don't want to touch this thing. This is desperate. So they gave it to the county attorney. He didn't look at it. He was then gone the next day, and they were apparently antsy to get it done. So he had his secretary just deliver it to the judge's office. He never read it. it went to the judge's office, and in Kansas we have a district court judge who is elected by and for the county. She refused to look at it. We do not know why. But there was a magistrate judge from a different county who was here hearing some traffic cases or something. And they said, have her deal with it. So they went down to her. She had court hearing set at 9. They went to her at 8:58 and gave her the documents. And she signed them. And an hour later, she realized that the police chief had never signed him and his signature hadn't been notarized. So they had to call the police chief back in to have his signature notarized. And she notarized the signature. There were complaints made not by us, but by other citizens against the magistrate judge and the state judicial conduct panel reviewed her actions and said that we can find no evidence that she did anything wrong, except we're putting an advice in her official file that in the future, before she signs things, it would be a good idea to read them. And we had a similar complaint against the county attorney, and they said that although the system, as you described, that went on, of a county attorney, a prosecutor reviewing search warrant requests before they're submitted to the judge is the normal way of doing things. It's not required to do that, so he didn't do anything wrong. He did not stand for re-election. The district magistrate judge has been removed from hearing cases in this county. She's still a judge, though. She got re-elected, and she's back in another county.
Okay. Well, and the prosecuting attorney, the county attorney who didn't look at it, is the one that eventually said, we're throwing this out. This is all garbage, right?
After he got called by the district attorney in Wichita, the biggest city in Kansas, who ended up being one of the special prosecutors, and told basically, you in a heap of trouble, boy. And then he read it on Saturday, he said, and decided that it was not a sustainable search warrant. He didn't bother to announce that, however, until Wednesday, after we had to publish a newspaper without any of our equipment.
So what day of the week was the raid on?
The raid was on a Friday. He supposedly read it on a Saturday. On a Sunday, we were contacted by the head of the Kansas Bureau of Investigation, who ordered that the case be taken over by the Kansas Bureau of Investigation, which it was on Monday. It wasn't until Wednesday that the county attorney withdrew the search warrant application and said he was going to return our material to us. Interestingly, there was a bit of a row over that too. We found out that they gave us an inventory of the stuff they seized, and then they added something to it after they gave us the inventory, which was that they'd made a copy of our hard drives, and they wanted to keep the copy of the hard drives. And the county attorney said to the judge, after he told the judge, sent a document to the judge saying, I'm squashing the search warrants, we're returning the things. And he said, I should return this. You should set up a special review panel that you can look at this in camera and give it back. And the judge basically said, no, you said return it. I said return it now, or basically you're in contempt of court. And so they wouldn't return it because it supposedly had FBI programs on it. So they smashed it. The undersheriff got a hammer and ceremoniously took the hard drive and smashed it into little pieces, put it in a plastic bag, and gave us the plastic bag.
Really? Oh my God. What? I mean, what was on that computer?
It was, the FBI software that they used, they didn't know how to run it. They tried to search our network, and the first thing they searched for the term Kansas. Well, we're in Kansas. I mean, everything's going to have a hit on the word Kansas. Then they searched for DOR, Department of Revenue, which is where the motor vehicle department runs in Kansas, but they did it just as the letters DOR. So they found all sorts of things for Finding Dory, the movie, the Disney movie, and I mean, just all sorts of junk that came up. The thing that they hit upon most frequently was a job application letter that somebody had sent us years ago, like 9, 10 years ago, that was somewhere on our server about the haunted hotel. He'd written an article about the haunted hotels of Arkansas. And for some reason, that story showed up a lot in their search. They never found anything related to the identity theft, supposedly, or the restaurateur, or any of that stuff in any of the searches. The warrant actually allowed them to do a preview search. And if there was evidence that we had this material, then they could seize the material. They never found anything on the preview search, but they seized it anyway.
Yeah, but they took it all anyway. Okay. Well, how about was there anything of value on the computer that you had for stories that were coming up and that kind of thing?
Well, we had the whole paper, and this isn't the same in every municipality, every jurisdiction, but once a year, the county prints a list of delinquent property tax owners in the newspaper. It's a very, very long list. And we had printed the first week of it the week before. The only copy we had was on the computers they seized. So it's several pages of just names and numbers. And we had to one of the things we had to do is figure out a way to replicate what we'd done to get that published previously. Because not only was our version we'd published gone, the source material we had for it was gone too. So we eventually did figure out a way to extract it from a low-res PDF of the previous week's paper and get it put back into shape, but that took a lot of effort. We didn't even have our nameplate, the little thing at the top of the front page that says what's your name. We didn't have it. We had to find it somewhere. They'd taken away not only our computer, but our file servers and all the computers we had. We had also had this on backup DVDs. Every computer that had a DVD player was gone. So we struggled. It was 2 all-nighters before we were able to get the paper out, but we did.
Wow. So you got, as far as you know, you got all your property back?
We got all our property back. By the time they returned it, they didn't return it to us. By that time, we'd hired a lawyer, and the computers went to a forensic analyst to see whether they had been they'd been tampered with or whatever, and they hadn't been. They'd been sitting they'd been sitting in a storage shed behind the sheriff's office because one of the reporters left her cell phone on, and her cell phone had a tracker on it, and she was able to track where her cell phone was during the time till the battery eventually ran out, and it was sitting in a shed behind the sheriff's office.
How long was it before you had to get an attorney before? How long was it before you got
we got an attorney that night, Bernie Rhodes of Kansas City, who's a great attorney for media matters, and he was representing us from hours after the event.
Okay, so how long was it before you actually got your property back?
Well, we got it back. It went to the forensic analysts on that Wednesday, and it was another week that they took it. So we were without it for 2 weeks.
Okay, but that was you wanted to have them analyzed.
Yeah, it was our choice to do that.
Got it.
By that time, we'd figured out how to work. Basically, we'd put together. We went into our what could gloriously be called our storeroom, and is more likely to be called the junk room, and found a bunch of old Windows XP computers that we'd trashed and put in there and set them up on a new network. And we were kind of functioning, 10 years out of date, but we were functioning.
So you get an attorney and obviously start working through the legal battle. Tell me about that. How did that go? When did you file your lawsuit? And
it was quite a few months before we filed the lawsuit, and wanted to get everything right. Then we also filed a separate suit we'd asked for, under the Open Records Act, copies of communication between politicians and law enforcement officers. And under Kansas law, politicians can communicate with each other, and basically you can't get it. But when you do the politicians to the law enforcement officer, you can. They denied that any such files existed. And then we found out in discovery for the case that they not only did exist, that there was this smoking gun where the mayor says, I'm behind you 100%. They lost their open records suit and ended up having to pay close to $80,000 in legal fees to us for having lost it. The other suits, we sued the county and the city, and the county is now settled. Not really settled. We wouldn't accept a settlement that included any sort of non-disclosure or did not include some admission of guilt. So it was actually a directed judgment that they agreed to. So a stipulated judgment that they we spent a lot of time figuring out the exact wording. They sort of admitted wrong was done, not that they did any, but wrong was done, and they gave to us and various staff members involved a total of a little over $3 million. And the county point has been settled. The city point is still going on. We haven't even started discovery. So it's going to be, our lawyers say if it goes all the way to a court, it will be maybe sometime the end of next year or later before we hear back on that. Some people, two people, one former reporter, one former office manager, have settled with the city already for similar amounts to what they got from the county. The problem in the city's case is the city doesn't have as much insurance as the county. And if the city were to give us the same amount as the county gave us, it would take the entire property tax levy of this year of the city to pay for it. So this is kind of a problem. We're trying to figure out ways to mitigate that damage. Say, well, we'll take it over several years. We'll do whatever. But the former vice mayor and one of our former reporters both have decided for sure that they don't want to settle. And I, as representing the company, myself, and my mother's estate, have also pretty much said we don't want to settle unless there's a clear admission of this. All the dismissal arguments that have gone on already have addressed all the key components of the case. A federal judge has ruled that there is probable cause to show that a conspiracy existed against us, that it was a violation of the Privacy Protection Act, it was a violation of the Fourth Amendment and the First Amendment. All those things are already on record. So it's pretty clear once all the paper is flown around the room that we're probably going to win this case. And we already won it from the county. So it's just kind of delaying the inevitable right now.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I guess maybe you can't or don't want to disclose to me what would you want from the city? What would, if to settle, what would they have to offer you?
Well, they were more responsible than the county. So, and it isn't just me, it's all these former staffers that we've got to worry about too. And some of whom have long-term health problems because of this. And they do have some legitimate damages that they need to be done. For me, it has been more about what they admit to. The first thing that encountered us is that there was a law written in the 80s called the Privacy Protection Act, which says that the preferred method of obtaining information from a news organization is by subpoena, that search warrants should be used only as a last resort, because a subpoena they can challenge, they can control, they can't rifle through drawers and see everything that's in there. They can focus on the individual documents. And the assertion of the city and county originally was that this wasn't established law. It had only been passed by Congress and signed by the president, but there'd never been a court ruling that specifically said this is law, and so they wanted to say that wasn't really law. And one of the things we want to do is get something in a court ruling that says, yes, indeed, it really is law. You actually have to follow it. So that's one of our prime concerns. And after that, it's just, we don't want it to be something that says, oh yeah, well, the insurance took care of it, big deal. We want it to hurt a little bit more than the insurance. And that's about it.
Sure. Yeah. It sounds like they're definitely in a bind though, because the
county, we went $50,000 over their insurance. That's what we did.
Gotcha. Okay.
It was a minor amount, just enough to, they're not going to buy a dump truck.
Right. Right. Well, wow, this is what I mean, take what are your takeaways from this? So, I mean, let you besides the fact that they raided you and violated the law, violated the Constitution, um, they put your mother under so much stress that she couldn't take it anymore, and she passed away within a day of the raid. Like, what? Tell me about the days after that and then through now. Like, you're still running the paper. You still, I mean,
Still running,
talking to you, you still seem to. I mean, I'm sure you have a lot of anger and, but you're you don't come, you don't come across that way. Like, I don't. How did you get past this?
Well, you try to understand it. I mean, try to understand why, and what you see. And I've been invited to all sorts of presentations and awards and everything all over the country. And everywhere I go, somebody tells a tale, and it's not exactly like ours. It may not be as serious as ours. In some cases, it's close to it, but it may not have gotten as much attention as ours did. But things like this are happening all over everywhere. And they're happening not just in weaponizing law enforcement. I mean, we see this in Washington, D.C. all the time. The allegations of law enforcement being weaponized against somebody's political enemies on both sides. I'm not going to confine it to just one party or one person. It seems to be a sort of breakdown of the rule of law, and even here in Kansas, the League of Municipalities has put out some advice to cities that says, well, everything's legal until somebody takes you to court and says it's not. Well, that's not the way to run things. And these days, going to court ain't cheap. You've got to, not only if you want to challenge it, let's pony up $150,000 to challenge this thing. And by the time you challenge it, the results have already been that you wanted have already been obtained. I mean, this has happened. And again, I'm not trying to pick on the current president or anything else, but he will come through and say, I'm going to dismantle this agency and destroy it. And then a year and a half later, the judge rules, well, you can't do that. But wait a minute, it's already burned. What are you going to do? How are you going to repair that? And that seems to be a trend right now. Part of this sort of overall bullying trend that's going on. And part of it's because, at least as I sit back and think about it, people have felt disconnected. They felt powerless. They can't do anything. They want something to change. They want government to be responsive, and it just isn't responsive. It doesn't do anything. And so they're willing to take anybody who stirs things up, causes problems, just put the bull in the china shop and see what happens. And that's kind of what's happened here. We got a bull in a china shop, and we're not that unusual to we just happen to be the right set of events at the right time in the right way. But it happens a lot of places, and there's a lot of things that go on that just are beyond pale. I mean, we've had a lot of problems, as a lot of rural areas do, with the migratory police officers who've been thrown off forces in other states for cause, and then they come get hired in this state, and you find out that the records haven't been kept because we're so concerned with personal privacy and somebody might sue us if we put this in their record, that we're not kind of looking out for society as a whole. And I think that this private, everything is focused on individual. Everybody's kind of out for themselves, and it's a decay of society. I mean, we come together as a civilization to support each other and we're kind of looking out for number one instead of for our community as well. So that's that makes you a little more philosophical about it, and to an extent, if you try to figure it out, feel like it was that personal anymore, although some aspects of it are certainly personal. We get used to the notion that we practice what people have labeled as accountability journalism. And when you do that, actually I wrote an editorial about this week, you're going to get accused of everything. And I pointed out this week, we got accused by the right wing and the left wing at the same time of deception. So I said, we must be doing something right,
That's pretty good. I think that, yeah, I would agree. You are doing something right if you got everybody on both sides mad at you for what you're digging into. Have you, how many people work for the paper?
Well, not enough right now. We've got vacancies. I had two reporters who, as soon as they got money out of settlements, basically left. Like
Okay.
one of them literally the same day, without any notice. And our office manager also did that. And our bookkeeping system was so disrupted by it that's a mess. We hired another bookkeeper back, and she promptly came down with stage 4 cancer. So we're on a new one after that. So we've right now got at least probably 3 openings that are unfilled. So we're trying to go with 3 down from where we are. So we have about 4. If we were normally staffed, we'd have probably 4 full-time equivalent people working on news and the rest working on some business stuff. So about 10 full-time employees.
Wow. Okay.
Which is way more than any newspaper our size that's owned by a chain has.
Oh, sure.
Now,
Sure.
I personally, I don't take salary, so that's one of the reasons why we can have more people. I never intended this to be a money maker. And the company doesn't pay dividends, it doesn't pay salary. I did one year when we had a very good year and the employees got a bonus. I took a share of the bonus. But other than that, since 1998, I haven't taken anything out of this paper. Which is one of the reasons why we can go ahead and challenge people about things, is that there isn't much you can do that can hurt us. I mean, I've got a pension as a retired professor. I have some investments I own because I started up an internet site and sold it. I had a pension even going back from the Milwaukee Journal, and I'm a cheap son of a gun who saves money, and so I don't really need money, and you can't really threaten us with money, and so it makes us a little bit different. And I understand that that's not going to be true for everybody, so I don't expect everybody to, be Don Quixote, but we can.
Wow, that's very cool. That is a wonderful position to be in when you're doing what you're doing, challenging people.
Yeah,
And
I was at work till 1:15 this morning, and when you don't get paid and you're at work till 1:15, you question it once in a while.
well, you obviously love doing it though. Otherwise,
Yeah,
you wouldn't do it anymore.
I wouldn't do it otherwise.
Well, I mean, as my dad would say, you're no spring chicken. Would your plan be for the paper? You wanted to keep it local. That's why you bought it. What would your plan be going forward?
My plan is trying to find somebody, and I actually just recently thought I did, and in the last minute they kind of backed out on me. But they lived in another region of the country, and they have a 3-year-old daughter, and the grandparents said, "Don't take our 3-year-old daughter and granddaughter and move clear across country." So that went awry that way. But we're still looking.
Okay. Well, what a story. And and you're still fighting the legal fight with the city. Yeah, this is crazy. But this is why I'm doing what I'm doing, because again, being a member of law enforcement, I want to highlight these things as much as I can, the fact that these things are happening. And you're right, they are. When I look, if I want to dig, go ahead.
I'll just hang on.
You're fine.
I'll just cut it off. I know who it is. areas.
Well, you did get that alert from your. Is your place okay? You said you got an alert
No,
from.
it's just the backups need to be cleared out. It's not a big thing.
Oh, okay.
So,
It's quite an alarm for
yeah.
the backups need to be cleared out. But anyway, yeah. I mean, this is why I want to do what I want to do when I started doing this is when you like you said when you look at it, it's happening. It's happening everywhere. I feel like it's easier to get away with in a small town, but it's happening in big cities all
Well,
the
and
time
we've been
too.
so gratified with the response we've gotten from people all over the country. And it literally has been apolitical. I mean, I remember going through, we got 10,000 email messages. And I remember literally going through them one night. I couldn't answer all of them, but I was just going through them next. And I went to him, so sorry what happened to you. It must be those damned Republicans. And I hit next and said, so sorry for what happened to you. It must be those damn Democrats. I mean, it was on both sides of everything. And a lot of people tried to support us. I mean, we were inundated with people who wanted to subscribe to the paper just to show support for us. We are the 121st largest town in Kansas, the 57th largest county. But right after the raid, we had the 8th largest newspaper circulation in the state. And now we don't anymore because a lot of them have expired. But we still have a fair number of them. And the interesting thing is a good number of people who subscribe to the paper have continued their subscriptions. And we get these notes that say, my town used to have a newspaper, but it doesn't anymore. Oh, it still publishes one, but it's not a real newspaper anymore. So we've decided we're going to adopt your town. And they've started writing letters to the editor about purely local issues. Should we have a yield sign at this intersection? I mean, they'll send a letter to the editor in about that. So it's kind of interesting. We've become sort of the Mayberry or the Lake Wobegon to a group of people.
That's awesome. That's very cool. Well, I mean, good luck I don't think you need luck. I think you've spelled it out pretty clearly that the lawsuit against the city is going to go the right way. It just is going to take some time.
Yeah.
But good luck finding somebody. I really hope you find somebody to carry on with this because you're right. It's so nice to hear that it's a local paper and has been a local paper for, what did you say? I don't know, 150 years or something?
Yeah, since 1869. The people in Marion bribed the newspaper editor to come to town. He'd been up in the county just north of us, where Abilene is the county seat, and they had a county seat vote. And he was in a little town about the size of Abilene called Detroit, not the Detroit we're all heard of, but a different Detroit. And Detroit lost the election, and they went up and bribed him to come down to Marion because we were the county seat in Marion County. And they got him to come down here and promptly sold the paper to the other family, the Hoke family that I was talking about.
Okay. Nice. Yeah. Yeah. So whatever that, yeah,
157 years.
157 years. God, I really do hope that you're able to pass the torch on to somebody and keep it local.
I don't know that we're good for another 157, but we're good for at least another few. So
yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for speaking to me, Eric. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Take care.